2022 Hoops class, plus a transfer offensive lineman is already out, and our number 5 most important defensive back coming up next.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We welcome you on into another Locked On Syracuse podcast, a Tuesday episode this morning where we are again visible on YouTube. You can watch us, Tim Leonard and Tyler Aki.
It's like MTV. It's like the video killed the radio star right here. Right. That's what I'm hearing right now.
Subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't already. You can also find all our podcasts wherever you get podcasts. And also, we're going to get into some college football stuff because that is right around the corner. We'll get you guys ready for the Syracuse football season all throughout the week here on the pod. But also, because college football is around the corner, NFL season is also about to begin. And nobody covers it like the Locked On Podcast Network. August 30th through September 8th. Circle your calendars. It's Locked On's ultimate season preview, taking you through every team in every division. Tons of experts on there. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, as that will be dropping August 30th, the ultimate season preview. Locked On's ultimate season preview for the NFL. So I'm very excited for NFL season, very excited for college football season. But Ty, we begin today, kind of picking up where we left off yesterday with college hoops, because Kamari Lands is out. And now Syracuse has to reevaluate things a little bit in this 2022 cycle, this 2022 class. Once was hyped to be a huge class. Now they are at 2 commits, 2 pretty good ones, Kadir Copeland and Justin Taylor. But the big question becomes, who is next? Who else can Syracuse add to kind of fill the void that Kamari Lands has left?
Well, it kind of gets down to, okay, you at this point feels like you need a banner guy, right? Kamari Lands was your banner guy, your potential All-American level guy. What's going to happen now? Are you going to go back into the Chance Westry sweepstakes? Is he all of a sudden a very popular target? JJ Starling, is he someone that maybe you can get in late with now? And I know Syracuse has been there for a while with him, but it feels like they've kind of fallen off a little bit in that regard, especially when they also go out and add another point guard. To me, I mean, you got to aim for something big here. And whether it's finding a diamond in the rough or finding someone who did really well maybe in their AAU, their Peach Jams, like a Don Barlow. I know that name has been very trendy. Is he going to be one of those guys that shoots into the top 50 now when we get our latest rankings? So it's just kind of looking through all of those guys and sorting out what's next.
I definitely feel like the chances of getting a JJ Starling, if anything, go up after the Kamari Lands news. We don't necessarily know what his viewpoint is on adding Copeland, who is kind of a similar position, Starling being a combo guard. But the way I see it right now, there's 5 guys that they are after, that they will continue to go after very hard. Those 5 guys are Chris Bunch, Peter Carey, and then 3 guys you mentioned there, JJ Starling, Dominic Barlow, and Chance Westry. And honestly, the order in which I just read those, starting with Bunch and Carey, kind of feels like the likelihood of nabbing the next recruit. I think Starling would probably be 3, and then just haven't heard a ton about Dominic Barlow and what his interest level is. And it still feels like he's figuring out where he's at and what school might be after him after such a big breakout at the Peach Jam. And then Chance Westry, it does feel like that has really died down. It feels like LSU is probably the front runner there. So to me, I could see Chris Bunch being the logical next add now that he is sort of in a similar role to Kamari Lands, a 6'7" forward. Maybe he slides in as being the 3rd guy in the class.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is like, where is the allure in all of that for Syracuse? Like, if that's the class of 3, you're going to need to go out and get some high-profile transfers, which isn't the end of the world. I think Syracuse is totally capable of doing something like that, especially at the wing position, because we've seen how they develop wings. And let's say that you got Cole Swider, and he has a really good season this year, and he moves on to whatever venture, whether it's overseas, NBA, tests out the waters, maybe goes to the G League, something of that sort. You've got a real selling point at the forward position, at the wing position. And we've gotten some tweets too in regards to our episode yesterday, which you can check out if you missed on our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube now. But it's from Derek L. And he tweets at us all the time. A great follower of the show. He says, I don't think this is as big of a deal as in the past with transfer portal being as viable a recruiting option as high school recruiting. Every year there will be high major kids looking for a new home, someone who even garnered big minutes. And I think that's kind of what Quincy Guerrier was. I mean, for Oregon, if you're an Oregon fan, you're bringing in Quincy Guerrier, an all ACC guy from a season ago, a guy who's got some quality minutes, can score, can rebound. That's a super appealing option for Oregon from a recruiting standpoint. And for Syracuse, if the reverse were to happen and they were to bring in a Quincy Guerrier level player, you'd welcome that with open arms.
Right. And I still think this class will be 4 guys when it's said and done, or maybe even more.
Really?
I mean, I think it's more
Are
likely
you including transfers?
No, 4 high school kids. I think I could see
Really?
it being 5. I mean, it's still so early. I feel like we're all kind of assuming that it's going to stop soon just because there's been so many early commits here. But to me,
I
Chris
have it
Bunch
at 3.
Okay.
Like
so
if we were to
think
set
would
our
be most
over-under here
likely?
at 3.5, I mean, it also wouldn't shock me if it ends at 2 either. I just
Really?
think that Jim Boeheim and the staff, they might look at the transfer portal, especially if they have a lot of success this year with some of their transfers, and the transition is a little more seamless than it has been in the past with some freshmen. I think that they will go that route because now it is so easy to do that, and it is so robust year after year. These guys have college-ready bodies. I just think also it might be a little smarter too. Like, unless you're getting the top 50, 75 guys, then what's the point? I mean, what's the point in taking a flyer on Chris Bunch? What's the point in taking a flyer on some of these guys?
But Chris Bunch is a good player. It's
Peter Carey. Yeah, okay, fine, he is. But what's the good if he cannot play for you in year 1? Why do that when I can go to the transfer portal? Well, but who knows? A lot of these top 100 guys, it's tough to find playing time. Even I think of Marek Dolezaj. He was really good at the end of his freshman year. The quality of play that he gave you was very limited in that freshman season. I'd rather go to the transfer portal and maybe find a guy who's ready to slide in right away for you, like Alan Griffin was. And Alan Griffin, even though he had his ups and downs this year, his first season at Syracuse was much more productive than Marek's first season at Syracuse. And with Jim Boeheim and the way that he's coaching now, I feel like he is in win every year mode, as opposed to, okay, let's wait and develop some of these guys.
Right, but you still need to bring in high school kids and develop them. And I still think that Chris Bunch could contribute first year and then be very good by a second year.
They have 2 guys right now. Maybe they add a third, but I would rather have
They need
guys
to add
that
a third, dude. I mean, after one guy last year, I'd be very disappointed if they stopped here with 2 high school commits. I think 4 is needed.
If you have transfers with 2 or 3 years of eligibility, I think that's fine. You're always going to have a disgruntled kid year after year. And I would rather have the guy who's been through it, who's got a college level body ready to go. I just think the transfer portal is a much more viable option at this point in going out and finding new guys. I'm not all in on the high school train anymore. I would rather have the guys who are ready at the college level.
But let's face it. I mean, I'm excited about who they added transfer-wise, but the reason why Symir Torrance and Cole Swider are on the market is because they've underperformed so far. Now, was that a byproduct of their environment? Probably a good portion of it was, but I don't know.
You could say the same thing about Elijah Hughes, too. I mean, all these guys that transfer,
He's different, I think
though. This year is going to be the one. This is going to be the one year where it might be a little different, where you'll see guys who performed at their prior schools move on. I mean, I think across the country. I mentioned Quincy Guerrier already. You have Marcus Carr is another guy who there are high profile transfers this season. I think you're going to find more of the guys who are in wrong situations, and maybe you can make them right. Like if Symir Torrance goes out and has a really good year this year, a solid year as a backup point guard, maybe he starts a couple games because of injuries or whatnot. Would that change your mind if Symir Torrance had a good season and you were happy with his production?
I'm not even really worried about point guard. I think they're set there between Gerard, Torrance. Like they've got point guards.
I'm not saying bringing in a point guard. I'm talking about would that change your mind about whether you go to the transfer portal or whether you stick with high school recruiting?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but I still feel like they don't have a lot of guys coming back next year. So, while I agree with everything you're saying about the transfer portal, it's a very viable option. It's going to continue to bring in a lot of bodies each and every year now going forward. It's the new college basketball. I totally agree. I think you can still get guys from the transfer portal while also adding 4 high school players because they're losing a heck of a lot of players next year. I mean, the guys that we know are coming back are Jesse Edwards, Joe Girard, probably Torrance, maybe Cole Swider, and that's kind of the list. I mean, we kind of know Buddy and Jimmy are out, and I don't know, Frank Anselm, TBD on how much playing time he gets. Like, I could see them only returning 3 guys after how many guys left this past year. And then you've got so many spots to fill that, yeah, bring on transfer portal, but also get 4 high school kids. You need a forward from this 2022 class, I think, for sure.
But I'm still in the camp that I would rather see it come from the transfer portal. I want someone ready because, I mean, yeah, like you said, they could lose a lot, but they also could retain a lot too. I mean, there's a lot of variability in what this roster could look like at the end of the 2022 season and the end of the 2023 season.
All right, so we're going to get into some football stuff in a little bit, but first want to remind you guys about SweatBlock. It's that time of year again. It is getting super hot out. I'm sure we are all sweating like crazy these days, no matter where you are. Even if you're in Syracuse, it is crazy hot right now. I know it's crazy hot down here in the South, and we've got a cure for you guys with SweatBlock. It's doctor-created, doctor-recommended, works for up to 7 days per use. They've got great wipes. They just sent me and Ty a huge package, tons of deodorant, wipes, everything you could ever think of. It's dry shirt guarantee. So if SweatBlock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. And it's featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters. Manufactured here in the USA, this is a must-have for everyone's toiletry bag. Whether it is a big presentation or a hot date, everyone can benefit. If you or someone you love is dealing with this, you have to check out SweatBlock. Get it today, 20% off at sweatblock.com with our promo code LOCKEDON, or you can buy it at Amazon or a local CVS.
This episode also brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for you and your local chain auto parts store to pretty much stock every single part you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? You don't know the answer to that question half the time. And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand that their warehouse happens to carry. You've got computers and phones with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, maybe even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Like a Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from some of the big chains. Guess what? $216 from rockauto.com. That's big time savings right there. It's a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. So go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, and be sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. Again, that's Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
All right, so getting into football now, and Cody Shear, we hardly knew you. He's already out. 12 days he spent on the Syracuse camp, went to practice, enrolled for a little bit, and the Arizona State transfer offensive lineman is gone. Kind of a shock. He joins Willie Tyler as a big brand name sort of offensive lineman transfer that has left before the season has started. I guess you could even include Ryan Alexander, different coaching staff, different regime. It was a while ago, but he left also in the middle of the season. So a lot of guys at the offensive line position leaving. What did you make of seeing that Cody Shear is gone after just 12 days?
Nothing. I mean, this was not important at all to me. Not even a blip on my radar. It's not a big deal at all for me because he wasn't really going to play this season. I mean, even just thinking about the logistics of it all, think of the timing when he gets to campus, right? He got to campus about a week ago. So he's going to ramp up and be ready to play and be in football shape and ready to hit guys. You're telling me in 3 weeks? No, not a chance. I mean, best case scenario, he was probably going to be ready by what? Week 6, week 7?
Yeah, he was a depth piece. Yeah.
He was a depth piece. And let's be honest, it may have been like a third string depth piece at that. So not really concerned at all about him transferring out. I don't think it's that big of a deal to see him leave. I'm not worried at all. Not worried.
I'm a little more worried than you. I don't think he was going to be an integral part, but he could have been an integral part if there were injuries. And by week 6, week 7, now you have a talented guy. Now, he hasn't played a college football game in his life.
Yeah, like how do we know he's talented? That's the thing.
Well, he had a high pedigree coming out of high school, at least. And he's went to Oregon, then went to Arizona State. That's 2 pretty solid football programs. So there is some talent there, we can say. We don't really know how it translates to college football. It probably doesn't translate all that great.
It's almost like a lesser version of Kadir White, almost. I mean, we don't know how good he is, but the fact that he didn't see the field at all kind of tells you what the coaching staffs, and in his case, coaching staffs, when I'm talking about Cody Shear, because he's been to 2 schools already and has left. So multiple coaching staffs saw him unfit to see the football field. So I'm not that, and who knows, maybe when he got to Syracuse, maybe the coaching staff said, you know what, I don't really see a need or see a use for you here at this school.
Yeah.
So what if it's 3 coaching staffs that have told him, we don't really need you? Then that to me says, okay, this is this maybe even addition by subtraction.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it seems like he was the 2nd string guy at Arizona State. So I would take him as being the 2nd string guy at Syracuse, probably, just based on how he was lined up in camp and reports from Arizona State. But again, that's Mike Cavanaugh. So it's just funny that it's worked out that way. That he went. Right. Well, no, nothing against Mike Cavanaugh. Just funny that he went.
We saw those offensive lines at Syracuse. We saw.
Yeah. I'm happy to have Mike Schmidt. Nothing against Mike Cavanaugh, but we need to change. I think everyone can agree about that. And it seems like Mike Schmidt's doing a good job. My only reason why I'm a little bit concerned is I really do feel like this unit that we've been promised has a lot of depth. It does and it doesn't. And I say that because we've talked about this. I think there's a good amount of depth at the guard spot, but you also have Chris Bleich and Dakota Davis who have been missing practices. We don't exactly know what their status is for game 1. It seems like they're going to be ready. I mean, Chris Bleich is just like
Chris Bleich is back at practice today, and
okay, because he's gone in and out, right?
Because that's a good sign. And when it's
I don't think it's anything
you feel
serious.
A little bit better. Yes, exactly.
Right. So I'm not overly worried, but at the tackle spot, there's not a lot of depth. And we talked about this, like Aaron Service, he's been injury prone his career. Now he played through injury last year. Definitely was something wrong with him. He seems to be healthy this year. Bergeron seems to be healthy, but it's offensive line. There's going to be 1 or 2 injuries over the course of the year. And that's going to require these younger guys who have been playing a lot in practice, and it seemed to be doing really well in practice so far. These freshmen that have come in, there's been great reviews, but I don't necessarily want them going up against Clemson this year. I don't think they're ready for that. So I'm still a little bit worried about the overall depth of the offensive line. That's why losing a guy like this, I don't think it's an addition. It just sort of becomes like, hopefully we didn't need him this year, but if we did need him, it's kind of a bummer that he's not there.
Well, looking back at the overall stack up of the offensive line, a lot of guys that are returning from a season ago, which usually is a good thing. But in the case of Syracuse, you look from a season ago, when you do go 1-10, an offensive line is probably the worst in the entire country. And you say, is that a good thing that you're returning everyone? Usually it is, but in this case, it might be an outlier of sorts. I think that the offensive line needed to be addressed a little bit harder in the transfer portal throughout the season or throughout the off season in the early stages.
And they seem to try, right? But they couldn't get a guy to stay.
And the frustrating part is you had a fantastic sales pitch, because guess what? You can point to last season, just point to the sacks allowed, really over the last 2-3 seasons, the sacks allowed, and say every single one of those 5 positions is up for grabs.
Right.
And guess what? If you're a good player, you probably have a good chance of starting all 12 games for us and maybe getting to the next level as a result of that. If you come and prove it, you have a built-in showcase game every single year if you're a Syracuse offensive lineman. It's against Clemson. If you can do it against Clemson, that's going to open some NFL scouts' eyes.
And the reason why I feel like Cody Shear losing does hurt a little bit, or him leaving does hurt a little bit, because Dino went out and still pursued him close to the season. Once he found out Willie Tyler was gone, they clearly went after someone, which tells me they value adding someone there. They understand that they might be a little bit thin at offensive line, perhaps, if injuries do happen. I mean, and
Well, you got
last year
Chris
we
Elmo in
saw
your back pocket now.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
I guess that's true. We can't forget about that. He was not bad, but still not good. And I
Which
don't
is
think
kind
he'll
of the
ever
bad
be.
thing, is that he was not bad by standards of what we saw last year. Still wasn't great, but he was
so
not bad by the standard set.
Right. No, I think they'll be fine at offensive line. If you had told me at the start of camp or in the offseason, you would have added Texas offensive line transfer, Arizona State offensive line transfer, plus Jacob Bradford, who's a lower community college transfer. I'd be like, oh, they addressed the problem. Great. The problem is they lost 2 of those 3 guys. So now we'll see where they go from here.
And 2 of the 3 guys that they lost did not play a single snap at those big name schools that were laid out either.
Right. So it's a little misleading to begin with to call them those 2. But anyway, all right, we will get into our most important defensive back list. We're going to start the countdown at number 5 right after this. But first, football season coming back. So we want to remind you guys about BetOnline.ag. It's that time of the year. It is the easiest and fastest place to bet on all your football games. They have some great contests for the football season this year. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo. You make a bet on Thursday, September 9th. That's the season opener. You got the Super Bowl champion Bucks and my guy Tom Brady going against the Dallas Cowboys. If you lose your wager at BetOnline, when you make a bet, any bet on that first game, you will be refunded up to $25 for new customers only when signing up and using promo code NFL100. So it's basically free money, Ty. Well, what do you have to lose? You get refunded if you lose the bet.
Right.
It's great. You can head to the website.
You got Tom Brady. You can't lose, right?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I'm surprised you said that, but I totally wholeheartedly agree. Right? Exactly. Head to the website, use our mobile device to sign up today. Receive your 100% welcome bonus when you put in our promo code. That's locked on, all one word, LOCKEDON for 100% welcome bonus on your first deposit over at betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. So our number 5 most important defensive back, and I guess we should start by discussing that I think this was the hardest number 5 we had, right? I mean, there were so many guys that could have been number 5.
Right. And we might have to do an honorable mention list, but yeah, I mean, there's a case for all 5 guys to be at all 5 spots. I feel like in some sort of, maybe not all 5 getting down, like the guys you have at 1 and 2 probably aren't 5 on most people's, but you could make an argument somewhere that they could be 3 or 4. It's tough. I had the most difficulty creating my 5 with this list, I feel like.
So we settled on Rob Hanna as number 5. With all due respect to, I'd say, Eric Coley, Ben LeBrose, who I feel like could be one of those under-the-radar guys that could break out this year. Smurf Greenwood, I think, was right up there. He's probably number 6 if you were ranking him right now. Adrian Cole even seems to be getting a lot of run and vying for that second cornerback spot. There's probably other guys I'm leaving out. I mean, you could even add in a Malcolm Folk if you wanted. This is a deep defensive back room. Neil Nunn, I feel like, is worth mentioning as well. He just got back to practice the other day, which is good to see. We'll see how
it feels like there's more defensive backs on this roster than offensive linemen, which is kind of a problem.
Yeah, so the defensive back room, I feel like, is similar to wide receiver, where on paper it's a hole. And it looks like, maybe there's a lot of inexperience there that's not great. But then I think about our history at that position and the history of recruits we've gotten at that position, like wide receiver, where Dino has just maximized wide receivers pretty well in his tenure so far in his offense. Defensive back, they've recruited great. I mean, look at the way Garrett Williams stepped up last year. That gives me confidence that there might be another Garrett Williams in there that maybe the recruiting rankings don't suggest he'll be that good, but he'll step up. So the way that defensive back has been a strength, I'm less worried about it being an inexperienced group this year. Plus, those inexperienced guys got a lot of run last year.
Right. I mean, look at our number 5, Rob Hanna. Started every single game for Andre Sisco after an injury. Now, it wasn't pretty from start to finish with Rob Hanna. If anything, you could say he actually he was actually really good in that Georgia Tech game, that first game that he had to play. He had 12 tackles. Imagine that. You're a true freshman. You're thrown into the fire literally like moments before game time. You're finding out that you're getting the start, and then you go out and have the best game of your season in that first game. That is very rare. Now, part of the big step in development is, okay, You got 12 tackles in your first game. How many are you going to get in your second game, your third game, your fourth game? And those numbers continued to deteriorate game after game with him. That's something that's going to need to improve because the tackling was not great for Rob Hanna.
No, it wasn't. And it seems like he was super undersized last year. Hopefully he's only a little undersized this year. We'll see what he comes out. I'm very curious to see what he looks like game one because the roster didn't show a lot of weight growth for him. But Dino has said that he looks good in camp.
Is what I think he's listed at right now. And is that
I'm
with
160,
pads on?
so
Because,
that's a problem.
Yeah, like I'm right there with you. I'm 160 as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're on YouTube now. We could stand up and show you our frames if we wanted to.
You
don't want us going out there. You don't want us going out there battling against some of these ACC receivers and tight ends.
No, I was disappointed to see 170 come up. Maybe it's higher than that. Maybe, I mean, he's a stronger 170 than I would be at 170. I think we can all agree on that. But he's a good player. He's got a lot of talent. He was a highly ranked recruit for Syracuse standards. And Dino has
every
said
ACC school wanted him. It felt like.
Yeah,
I mean, if you go through his offer sheet, Louisville, Miami, UNC, Pitt, BC, Maryland's an honorary ACC program. I mean, every single big sort of program in the ACC. I guess you're leaving out Clemson, Florida State, but there were big name programs that wanted this kid a season ago.
Yep. And I think he was from the same high school. I think it was Palmetto High School. So there's been a couple different recruits from there. So he was a good get for Syracuse. And it looks like he's going to start at one of the three safety positions to start sort of the season, at least, because Dino has said, this was Dino's direct quote. I'll read it to you guys. He said, "It's still open, but there's no doubt that Jihad is a good player and Hanna is a good player. We're trying to build the guys up from the bottom to see who else can get in there, and they have to have the ability to play different positions so that we have the best guys on the field." So they're still figuring it out, but I would expect right now after that quote to see Rob Hanna, Jihad Carter back there as the two deep safeties based on what we saw last year as well, where they did start after the injuries.
Yeah, 9 games started a season ago for Rob Hanna. And believe it or not, and this is kind of scary when I looked at this and saw this yesterday on Pro Football Focus, but he had the 5th most defensive snaps of any player on Syracuse.
Wow.
Which, for a guy who A, played 9 games, B, is a true freshman that clearly was not ready last year.
Didn't even have a real camp. Yeah.
Right. Like, shows the dire situation they were in after they lost Andre Cisco. And it wasn't great. I mean, I mentioned he had that great game against Georgia Tech right out of the gate where he had 12 tackles and he had a coverage grade over 80 from Pro Football Focus. That's good. But he also led the team with missed tackles with 19, despite the fact that he did only play 9 games. 19 missed tackles. You know where that stacks up in the country? 11th. Like, ooh. 11th. And you played 9 games. There are guys out there that played 13, 14 games. And listen, I know he wasn't ready, but the tackling has to get better with him. And you think about it too, missed tackles, you'd imagine, okay, some of them are coming from linebackers and stuff like that. You are a safety. You are the last line of defense. If you are missing 19 tackles over the course of a season, that's no bueno. That needs to get better for this upcoming season if this run defense wants to get better.
It's funny. We'll dissect this football team every which way, but to me, on offense, it comes down to, is the offensive line going to be better? On defense, to put it in layman terms, it's, can you tackle this year? Like, that was the issue last year. So we'll see what they bring tackling-wise. We'll continue to count down our most important defensive backs as the week goes along. Number 4 coming tomorrow on our Wednesday show. And then we'll double up at some point. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow on the Wednesday show and do number 3 as well because we're off a day. But we're continuing to get you guys ready for football season. Also tomorrow, interesting quote that Stephen Fonte tweeted about the quarterback position, saying maybe there will be a platoon system. Looks like Tommy's in the lead as we've kind of expected so far. We'll get into that, our thoughts on potentially playing 2 quarterbacks at the same game and rolling out 2 different quarterbacks at once. We'll dive into that on tomorrow's show. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse. We are wherever you get your podcast.